Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Wednesday, December 22nd, and this is virtual lunch number 461. Our guest today is Geoff Vance, a litigation partner at Perkins Coie and the firm-wide chair of its e-discovery services and strategy practice. And this is part of our continuing series on lessons learned and looking ahead with Cobra Legal Solutions. Hi, Geoff. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, Geoff, tell us about your background and your practice at Perkins Coie.
I do three things here at Perkins Coie right now. I'm a commercial litigator, so I have my own litigation practice, mostly in the United States. I run our e-discovery group. That's where I got to meet and work with Angela and Doug Kaminsky and other people over at Cobra. And I run our Shanghai practice. I'm a managing partner of our Shanghai office. I help run our 4 Asia offices. And so those are the three things I do at Perkins. Now, Ari, I got here about 6 years ago from McDermott, Will & Emery. I worked there for 18 years. That's when you and I had a chance to overlap and practice together. So I worked there. I grew up as a baby associate into income partner, into equity partner. That's where I learned about e-discovery. That's where I started to get involved. Involuntarily, by the way, with e-discovery. And that's also how I got involved with China. So it really did set me up for my practice now, in that I spent 18 years getting to know the e-discovery practice from its infancy to its maturity. At first, that was back in the day when clients wanted to reduce the cost of the review side, when it was cheaper to go to Asia to get people to work. It's no longer that way, by the way. It's actually more expensive to get Chinese reviewers than in the United States. But that's what it was. So we started with just finding cheaper, more cost-effective lawyers. They are PRC qualified lawyers to work in China. And then it actually blew up into McDermott's idea of, let's just open an office. So we opened an office. We had an alliance with a local law firm, one of the first in the world where a US law firm had an alliance with a Chinese law firm in shared revenue and shared work. But baby steps from e-discovery to the bigger picture for McDermott into growing a Shanghai office. So most of my meetings with China are from 8 at night to 2 in the morning. And so I have my litigation practice during the day, have a little break, and then do my China work at night. The beauty of the pandemic, it has allowed me to be flexible in my work hours. So I can sleep in till 9 or 10 if I'm up till 3 without worrying about missing court calls or not showing enough FaceTime in an office. It's been really great and fairly easy to adapt. Now, mind you, remember that China had the pandemic before the rest of the world had the pandemic. I mean, I remember returning to the US because of the Chinese New Year. Back then, January 2020, we literally thought it was only going to be kept within that Wuhan area and wouldn't even make it to Shanghai, much less Beijing. So we just thought it was a small little thing. So when I landed, we then thought, okay, it's going to affect our China offices. Of course, we didn't think it'd affect the rest of the world. So we had the pandemic before everyone else, because in January and February, we were shutting down those offices, transitioning to working remotely, which is unheard of in China, and doing all of that way before the US offices started to catch on. So it's been really actually a fun experience, not fun because of the pandemic, but fun because we've learned a ton. And I actually got 2 bites of the apple because I learned when it came to China. So when it came to the US, we had already done it. As a matter of fact, when people in the US were transitioning home, our China offices were transitioning back to work. Let's say we're back in April of 2020, and all the law firms thought we were going to crater. All the litigators thought we'd lose all of our work. We had no idea what we were going to do the rest of the year. We were talking about giving ourselves 80% pay cuts, and thankfully not laying anyone off at Perkins Coie, but other law firms were laying people off, and we were really expecting the worst. At some point in June, you realize nothing slowed down yet. And in July, you started to have a panic. Holy crap, what are we going to do? Because I need to learn how to litigate remotely. But it never really affected the number of lawsuits or the pace of the litigation, which I give tons of credit to the judges, to the courts for doing that. Courts remained open, judges remained accessible. And really the only difference I saw was how we litigated. We do this using Zoom instead of doing it live. And thank goodness. I mean, law firms have been having their best years last year and this year. And it's a real testament not only to the lawyers being adaptable and to all of our staff being flexible, especially our IT groups that helped us work seamlessly and be effective litigating remotely, which I never thought we'd do. My preference is the hybrid day when we can go to status calls remotely, so I don't have to fly to LA for a 20-minute status call. But when it matters, when there's a summary judgment argument or a jury trial, I can be there in person. That's the perfect world to me. And I think we're going to get there. If we're going to be glass half full, that's what the pandemic has done, where we're really good at litigating remotely now. Before, we were really good at litigating in person. Now we can do both. So I prefer hybrid. Having said that, oh my gosh, are we as a plaintiffs and defense bar getting really effective? Not just good at using technology, that we're good at, but being effective, being persuasive, not letting this remote litigation change the way we're litigating. So I like that. What concerns me is, of course, is I do think I lost a little bit of effectiveness in person. I actually had an in-person hearing, and I was actually nervous to introduce myself, and it was very weird. Brought me back to like a third-year associate. I wrote out my name. Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Jeff Vance. I represent, just because it was so different to have not only the judge there, but the clerk and other people around me. And sometimes people would move and you kind of get spooked out that someone's in the courtroom with you. So I do worry that maybe we have forgotten how to litigate in person, and it's going to take me a while to get back up to speed on that. And of course, I always worry about just the mental health issues that come with being remote, but that's a whole different story. Being a good lawyer to me is 99% preparation, preparing for the technology, preparing for the topics, going through rehearsals and planning for all the different things that could happen. So people who are effective at using technology in the first place already have a leg up. And people who are in the remote world, being prepared is even more evident. I will remember days I clerked for a federal judge, and I remember watching some of the stalwarts. Dan Webb comes to mind. He was just so comfortable there that you focus less on the content of what he's saying and more on how he looked. That meant almost as much as the presentation. In the Zoom world, when the judges see us right here and juries see us right here, it's all about prep. It's all about content. It's all about true persuasiveness. People who are less comfortable in public settings and more comfortable just facing a camera in their own private room are terrific lawyers. They've always been terrific lawyers, but this really highlights their strength. I'm not only a Navy vet, I'm an Army brat. So my dad was in the Army, so I moved every couple years. And so add that to me being a veteran. And by the way, I didn't actually intend to be an active Navy person. I joined in the middle of my sophomore and junior college years. I was going to be a reservist. And then August of 1990, I was in boot camp in Orlando, and Iraq invaded Kuwait, and they called up all the Navy reservists. So I didn't mean to be active duty, but I was. And all of that proves what my answer is, which is what I've learned through all that is if you're adaptable, if you can adapt quickly to a new situation, maybe one you didn't foresee, it's all going to be fine. I've learned in the Navy, take a deep breath, identify the issue, and just do your best to address it. And if I'm doing my best and it doesn't work out, that's all I can do. The other part is being prepared is key. It's the one thing that they don't teach kids in law school. Preparation is it. And the people that look like they are the best at just going with the flow aren't going with the flow at all. They're just really, really prepared.
Jeff, you probably like being virtual now because I know how you travel. I know when things started back up. So you don't have to do, I'm in Florida today and I got to be in New York tomorrow. Then I got to be in Washington. So now some of them can be virtual. Has that been easier? I would imagine it is.
I'm right with you, Angela. Yes, I will tell you, I have hit my 1K status on United and my globalist status on Hyatt. I took it to an extreme before, so this has been a nice, relaxing pullback. I got to the point where I was traveling so much, and I'm not alone in this. I would wake up and not really remember what city I'm in. All right, I forgot I'm in Florida. I'm not in Manhattan. So that got a little crazy. And then you go the other extreme, which is you're shut down. You're not traveling for months and months and months. And now the theme of this, maybe that hybrid thing, now I travel, but I'm not traveling every day. I still travel once every week or 2 weeks, but I get to go somewhere, come home, and spend time with my family for the next 4 or 5 days and then do it again versus go somewhere to another place, to another place, to another place, to another place, get home on Saturday morning, leave on Sunday night, see my kids on Saturday night, and move on. Pandemic bad. I get it. I'm not trying to make this like it's a great thing when you're in the middle of a pandemic, but we as a legal industry at least have really learned to be okay during the pandemic. And frankly, I think we've learned to be successful during the pandemic. Most of the top 100 AmLaw firms last year had their best years. I think you're going to hear the same thing this year.
Jeff Vance, everybody. I love it. Jeff, thank you so much for being part of the virtual lunch. Thanks to Cobra for supporting our series on lessons learned and looking ahead. It's such a privilege to see you again, and I'm so grateful for your time.
It was great. Thanks for inviting me.